if we're not careful, Stephen Jenkinson says the problem with mainstreaming is that you start to shave the edges off whatever the thing is until it fits nicely into the mainstream. And once it fits nicely into the mainstream, it's basically indistinguishable from what it was that you were trying to fight against when it was countercultural, right? Mm-hmm. And so I'm wondering how much, and I think about this, how much we're mainstreaming ourselves in the process of attempting to mainstream psychedelics, and how will that impact the psychedelic experience that people will have once there's a system in place for them to access it legally and medically? Your thoughts?
Dude, that's a great point. Yeah, and I'm so glad you brought Stephen Jenkinson into it. He's one of my absolute heroes.
Oh, he's great,
fantastic. Yeah, he really is. I think this is kind of, I think that's really nicely articulated, because this is the Trojan horse point I was kind of trying to make earlier, but said better. It's that if we, and it kind of points to something else, I think a theme emerging that I'm only just kind of noticing right now is like, there's a question of integrity, and there's a question of being true to ourselves, and a part of that is being true to the weirdness and the countercultural element, and the disagreeability, and the fun, and the all of the things that have made the psychedelic community and culture what it is. And I think absolutely it will change the experience. If the first time someone encounters psychedelics, the only narrative they're hearing is, this is a wellness thing, it's like a flotation tank, and this is ultimately like, even to take it to its extreme, like there's an assumption behind the idea of aspects of the psychological idea that when something comes up for you in a psychedelic experience, that is an aspect of your psyche, taking some form, and to go into and integrate it. Now, I do believe that's true. It's certainly true for me. I would say that's pretty much how I navigate the psychedelic experience, and it's quite true. But a Shipibo model would be totally different. It would be like, this is a spirit you're going to have to kind of encounter, deal with, negotiate with, or get rid of, or whatever it might be. And those are two very different ontologies. So we're already selecting for a particular ontology right now, which is the Western psychological one, when people are going through clinical trials, because they're not saying, hey, if it starts to get hairy, that's because there's some fucked up spirits in the room, and we're going to do a lot of shit with. We're going to get rid of those.
That's because you're being possessed by demons. Resist.
Resist. Yeah. So, and it would only work to do that if there was the kind of cultural embedded thing of like, okay, no worries. Well, I can know how to handle that. That's part of the way I see the world. So of course it would be crazy to do that. And I'm not suggesting we do, but we are just by default always selecting for particular things, and we're selecting for ontologies. Now, I think that's probably super appropriate for the trials, and for people. I know because my wife worked on the Imperial trial. Like, people are in a very vulnerable state, and they need a lot of care and attention. And I think they do a fantastic job in the clinical trials, like taking them through that experience. That guiding is what they need. But if we're talking about people who are like a healthy population, let's say in 5-10 years, coming to psychedelics, and this is a point a few people made in the film, it's like, we need a multitude of narratives that they can explore, and ideally a way to help people explore narratives. To be like, okay, look, here's a real Jungian approach to the psychedelic experience, and a lot of people think this, and this is a way to kind of make sense of it, navigate it. Here are like 5 indigenous approaches that each say something different. Like, it's sense making again. It's like psychedelic sense making. It's like, okay, wow, okay, which operating system am I going to run? And ideally, I'm kind of running multiple at the same time, that I have a frame of reference where I can go, how interesting. I actually read this thing about this kind of experience, and I wonder if it might be helpful right now to take some wisdom from this tradition, and go, okay, well, this is remember this from the Tibetan Book of the Dead. I wonder, things like that. So that plethora of narratives and the flexibility to move between narratives is something I would personally really like to see. And what we get with what we get if we all try and squeeze ourselves into being respectable, materialist, scientific medically approved versions of psychedelic people is that we run the risk of losing those narratives. Now, I don't think that's necessarily going to happen because we have quite a diversity of perspective in the wider community, I think. There's lots of different approaches, but which, like to your point earlier, which of those perspectives win out? Because a perspective with a lot of money that is allowed to talk about it is currently winning out. You know, like that perspective, the kind of medicalized well-being kind of angle, you know, the Gwyneth Paltrow effect, so to speak, is currently what the mainstream culture is encountering. And they don't really have so much encounter with the many other narratives that are